thank you, Newsworks and Ollie, Fran and Sophie for the opportunity to talk to you. It's actually been really interesting just chatting to you guys in the coffee break. I feel like I've learnt loads already. And we're here to talk about a new generation of journalism. But Ollie, I think that you actually wanted to be an Arsenal goalkeeper originally. Yep. Even after this week, you could have done any better.
I realised, I think, age 12, that I was shit at football, and so I decided I wanted to be a football reporter. Thought it could be a busman's holiday, and so then I decided I wanted to be a war reporter. Subsequently, thought, no, I just don't have the bottle. You know, I got to know a few war reporters, and you can end up in quite an odd place through it. So, I guess I went into newsbrand, kind of established newsbrand, which at the time was The Independent. Partly because I was desperate to become a news reporter. You know, the kind of posh answer, if you like, is that I love the idea of your work having some impact. And occasionally getting to break some exclusives, you know, sometimes expose some wrongdoing, and you know, over the years when that's happened, it is very satisfying. I think there's an element of sort of prestige and trust there as well, which you can get on some of the newer platforms, but it's rarer. I enjoy the teamwork, which I think you can achieve more collectively often than you can together. And there's a few one-person sort of brand exceptions, but they are rare. And I guess for me, one of the big things at the minute, one of the reasons I've stayed in, I mean, at the moment at the Eye, you know, we're a hybrid publisher, if you like, across print, which we've been doing for 7 years. You know, we're 3 weeks younger than Instagram, and digital for the last couple of years. We launched our own website, and that's growing pretty quick. But one of the things that keeps me interested in that kind of hybrid publishing model, rather than just disappearing off to a digital-only one, is the kind of engagement you get. Well, two things, actually. One is the engagement you get from your audience, which is really, really high in print for me. It happens on a more ephemeral level on some of our digital products, but especially in our print, the level of emotional connection and buy-in is huge. You know, people are bought into the package from the outset. So that's something I really enjoy. And the second thing is the commercial success. You know, I think there's this idea, you know, we can all look at some of the challenges the print market has had over the last few years. Most print publishers or most established news brands, you know, have print as a key part of their portfolio, making quite a lot of money. You know, there's some exceptions to this, but most are making a tidy profit, if not a healthy one. And, you know, I mean, last year the Eye made the best part of £10 million profit for a relatively new print business. I've worked for a dying print brand, and I've worked for ones that are growing, and I know which I prefer, because when you're commercially successful, you can reinvest that, you can hire more journalists. Yeah.
And I know, Fran, you said before that you were offered a job with Lad Bible, which is commercially successful and probably seemed quite sort of sexy and attractive for lots of young people across the industry. So what is it that then actually led you to go to what's a more traditional news brand?
I mean, I think it's a cliche that when you want to be a writer, you want to be writing somewhere that's setting the agenda for the day on what you're interested in. So for me, it was politics and business. And, you know, the Lad Bible, they've got a pool table in the office, and that's fantastic. And you can do this video on Facebook, and that's great. But it doesn't give you the same opportunities that I felt or that I've received at the Telegraph. You know, no one's going to turn around to me at the Lad Bible and say, can you go to Bratislava next week? But it's a completely different platform. So I think for me, for what I was interested in and what I wanted to achieve, and who I wanted to be reading what I was writing and would be truly interested in what I was writing, for me, the traditional news brand and the Telegraph was an easy winner for me.
Yeah. And Sophie, why Snapchat at the Sun particularly?
Pure dumb luck.
Yeah.
I was in the right place at the right time. So I joined the Sun just on the online features desk doing casual shifts, and you know, built up a good relationship with the editor. And I was telling Ollie about this in the coffee break. I said, like, would you believe me if we got drunk at the Christmas party and talked about the future of video, and that's how I got the job? But that's pretty much how it happened. You know, I've always worked digitally. I've never really worked in print. So I've always been kind of digital first thinking, and it's kind of come as second nature to me. So when I was at the Sun and we started talking about video and the future of that, and then that kind of developed into, right, this new product's coming along that we've been asked to, you know, be a part of really early on. It's Snapchat, do you want in? I was like, absolutely. It was just a no-brainer for me. You know, I think one of the great things about Snapchat, and there are many, and working on it at a brand like this, is it kind of removes your ego a bit as a journalist. It's not about your byline because it disappears after 24 hours. So you can't get too attached to a piece of content or anything like that. And it makes you think about, you know, your audience and your reader first. You write what you know they want to read, what you know they're interested in. And it's not that we go where the audience is. We listen to what our audience want. We look at the stats. We look at what does well. And having that, you know, instant feedback, like anyone who works on digital knows, you know, you can get obsessed with analytics, you know, and being able to do that somewhere like The Sun, you've already got this huge audience. It's really exciting.
And how do people react when you say to them, oh, I'm a Snapchat editor?
At The Sun.
Yeah.
The first thing I say is, yes, it is a real job. Yes, I'm the first one to have it. And that most people, because this is going to, I don't know if this might sound creepy or not creepy, most of my friends aren't 15-year-old girls. So most people go, I have to be honest, I don't know what it is, I don't know how to use it. And I'm like, that's fine, you're not our target demographic. But they usually, when I actually explain what it is, and it is an edition that goes out every morning, it is 12, the minimum of 12 stories. It is, I think of it in magazine formats. So we start with our hard showbiz news, our biggest news stories first, then we move into more featurey pieces, viral videos, explainers, quizzes, things like that. They usually go, that is really, really cool, and I wish I was not a corporate lawyer. I wish that was my job instead.
And Fran, what about you? When
I actually had someone ask me what I did last week, and I said, oh, you know, I'm a reporter, and they went, I've never met one in real life. What's that like? You know, it's like it's a mythical creature that actually they read the stuff, but they never get to meet us. But I would say everyone that I've spoken to meets my job in extreme enthusiasm. They're interested in what we do, how we do, what makes a good story, what doesn't make a good story. I've had the odd person that kind of thinks, oh, you know, journalists, we know what they're like. But I think in the last year, you know, we've touched on earlier fake news a little bit, and I think working at a news brand that has such a big reputation and such a legacy, I'm fighting for that chance to move our brand away from fake news and say, well, it is fake news, it is out there, but that's not who we are, and that's not what I do as an individual. So yeah, mostly it's a very positive response, and people can't believe that we exist in real life.
So fake news was our word of the year for 2017. And looking forward, how do you guys perceive the rise of citizen journalism? Do you see it as an opportunity, or do you see it as a bit of a threat that is encroaching on the credibility of the industry?
It's one of the biggest opportunities that established news brands have had for many years. And the reason for that is, you know, the shift in the news culture, the way that people consume information has been profound, as we all know. But if you look at the role that journalists once had, it was almost as kind of gatekeepers of news, if you like. There's always been gossip, you know, at the kind of local pub level. But journalists were to some extent gatekeepers of information. Now, you know, it's a bit naff as a way to put it, but, you know, journalists have to think of themselves as kind of enablers of conversations, informed conversations, ideally. The quantity of citizen journalism, if that's what you want to call it, material is only going to increase. In turn, the demand for people, whether it is news brands, whether it's respected social influencers, people who can filter that, analyse that, interpret that, is only going to increase. And so the role of journalists becomes that much more important. You know, you can see what happens when the ecosystem goes badly wrong. You know, there's all too many examples of that over the last few years. So if you're, you know, a trusted news brand, a respected social influencer, you know, it's almost like a kind of kite mark of quality. So yeah, it's an opportunity, not a threat. And I think, and you know, and I would say this, but I think there's been a flight to quality that's backed up by some of the evidence you look at among some of the established news brands in the UK. You can also see it in the US. You know, in the UK, you've obviously had, you know, I mean, we've been involved in the Eye now for 7 years since we launched it. That's worked, but also the Times, the FT, news brands like this that have really invested in their content. You can see the impact it's had on their audience. In the US, the New York Times and the Washington Post, their subscription rates have gone stratospheric since Trump came to power because people feel an urgent desire to understand what's going on and to react against that. You can also see it in the magazine industry here. You know, I mean, we've all read about how bits of UK magazine publishing is challenged. Not if you're at Private Eye or The Spectator or The Economist. I think all three of those are seeing record audiences at the minute.
And Fran, how did that affect your decision to come into the industry when you think there's lots of people who are just sitting in their bedroom and can log on and start a YouTube blog or vlog?
I mean, I think the thing for me is, to use an example, and it's a sad example, but it's true. When the Manchester Arena attack happened, I was working in Manchester, and I got on the train the morning after, and nearly every single person was reading a newspaper. They weren't checking their Twitter feed to find out what had happened. They weren't going to their favourite blogger to find out what happened. So I think no matter how much citizen journalism there is, there's always something that a respectable news brand can give you, that there's that trust there, there's that relationship with your readership. And I think for me that's going to be very difficult for even bloggers or whoever it is to encroach on that. So for me there will always be that demand there for an established news brand to be giving you the facts, we've talked about context a little bit, you know, to be able to give you the morning after an incident or an election or whatever it may be, to give you that full context, the full picture of what's happening, which you don't sometimes get from Snapchats of, say, if it's a blogger saying their unsolicited opinion. You know, and most people can tell the difference between an opinion and gossip and facts that are put in a newspaper. So I think no matter how much citizen journalism there is out there, we will always stand, you know, and be kept to a high level, but we'll also offer something that they're not able to.
And Sophie, is that any different for Snapchat? I think particularly with the changes this week, everything's getting jumbled up now on the platform. Is it any different that you guys are sort of more maybe amongst other people that are putting their opinion out there without a brand there as well?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point actually, and the change has literally happened in the last 2 weeks, and in terms of numbers for us, I mean they've just gone through the roof. So from our point of view, that looks great, but it's got its new challenges now because we're now getting people coming in that didn't know they were coming into the Sun, because when one story ends, it takes you automatically into another one, which it didn't do before. So now it's a new challenge for us because it's not just, before these changes happened a couple of weeks ago, we had our core audience, we were doing incredibly well, and that's what we were working on, and we knew what this audience wanted, we knew what we were giving them. And now we've got sometimes double the numbers of people coming in, and now it's working out, okay, right, how does that change our dynamic? Do we kind of just hunker down and do what we do well? Do we move into other areas, things like that? But I think that what's interesting as well is not just exactly like you were saying, Fran, after events, people coming for facts. We went quite hard on the election on Snapchat because I kind of, was a bit like was quite ferocious about it. I thought, I saw the stats for how many young people voted in 2015. I was like, no, that's, I don't want this anything bad or good or whatever to happen for want of good information, for want of accurate information. So as soon as Theresa May announced the election, we did a snap and we were like, right, what do you want to know? What questions do you want asked? What questions do you want answered? And the level of engagement that we got back from our readers was so encouraging, and it was so kind of heartwarming. I got a bit emotional reading it, because we're getting things from Lauren, I'm 20, I live in London, and I always hear, oh, such and such is going to raise taxes and that's really bad, and such is going to lower tax, that's really good. And she's like, but don't taxes pay for the fire service and things like that? So the next day, we can respond to it immediately. We put a snap in, this is what your taxes pay for. So we're able to fill these gaps, and because of the relationship that we have with our readers, we can tailor it to them. What is it that you want to know? And they come to us and they trust us. And exactly like you guys were saying, it's about having that trusted brand. And it's not just about politics as well. At Valentine's Day, we said, right, guys, are you freaking out about anything with Valentine's? Do you not know what presents to get, things like that? And that again, maybe I'm just really, really soppy. I got really emotional reading the emails that we got, being like, hi, I've been dating someone for 3 weeks and he says he wants this pair of jeans, but they're £150, and do I buy them? I don't even know if I like him that much. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, and then I'm playing agony on, and but it is that level of trust that they put in us. And it's the most rewarding thing about my job, hands down, that relationship with the readers. And I totally agree with what Ollie and Fran said. I just don't think you can get that with something that's popped up in the last kind of, say, 6 months or a year.
And I know you mentioned that there actually are a lot of similarities even with Snapchat, so that you have your format that goes out each day at certain times and things. But how is it different? Because obviously it is still vastly different from a print title that comes out and you've got in your hand each morning. So what do you need to do more or less of to make people swipe up for more content, or to try and build a relationship with someone over a matter of seconds?
Yeah, I mean, when I've been on the tube before and seen, looked over someone's shoulder and seen them reading it, and you see them kind of tapping through, and I'm like, no, that took 12 hours to make. Go back, read it properly, enjoy that. But we get the stats back. We see, how much people engage. And when we started off, we had people in the edition for 70, 80 seconds. And now, we've managed to build that up to, we can get them in there for 4 minutes. And it's a breakdown through stories as well. And some people are in certain stories for 3 minutes alone. And I think that it's probably quite a common thing that people think that it might be, because it's snaps, because they're 10-second snaps, people only want, this younger audience that only want 10 seconds of information. So we went with that in the beginning. We tried out a lot of different things, and we were telling showbiz stories in 10 seconds. And then we had user testing. We spoke to them afterwards, and they were like, we wanted more. We were really disappointed that we couldn't swipe up into something. So that's why we don't just do 12, 10-second videos. We do longer. We'll have 500-word articles in there. We embed videos. We make really detailed infographics and all that kind of stuff. So I think that it is different to a paper, absolutely, but it's an exciting kind of different. We're able to take a nib from the Bazaar page, and that could be our lead story, because maybe that celebrity isn't massively interesting to our paper audience, but for our Snapchat audience, they are the be-all and end-all, and we can turn that into something, huge. And again, that totally depends on the great brands that we're already working from and the amazing resource that we have in the newsroom.
So this is just one really great example of the titles being more innovative, which maybe might surprise some young planners or some young people across the industry who sort of claim that print is dead or print is dying. So what would you say to those young planners of that opinion today?
I think if you were to start off, 6 million people leave their homes every morning. Don't take the most direct route to work. Use a very old-fashioned concept called cash to pay for a national newspaper. That's not a small audience in the first place. And as I said earlier on, most national sort of news brands are making a pretty healthy profit, actually. I suppose if you want the kind of posh answer, I've tried to boil it down. I thought I think the future for news brands, perhaps not all news brands, but quite a lot of them, is very bright. For a variety of reasons. One is around the transparency thing. You saw P&G refer to a fraudulent supply chain, and Keith Weed at Unilever last week, calling time on Google and Facebook over some of the content there. Trusted content, obviously brand safety, I promise anyone here that if you give me an advert to run in the iPaper, I will not publish it next to an article endorsing beheading. We're good like that. You have the volume, and I know Newsworks done a lot of research about the collective weight of news brands. It's actually greater than Google in this country. Lastly, it comes back to that engagement thing, which we know in print, it's not just an eyeball. We've all seen the research on eyeballs, and the fact that people are lingering in a product they've already subscribed to up front, as it were. It's about the emotional connection as well, which is absolutely critical, and it informs the type of journalism we do, and it informs the type of content that our commercial partners want to run.
I would add to that as well, people say that newspapers are dead. These are the same people that thought vinyl was dead. For me, there's always going to be a need for quality journalism, whether in whatever form that comes in. Yes, the Telegraph is a newspaper, but we're also so much more, and we do so much online. And it's the same for most news brands in this country. We're not just one product. And I think there's a view that digital is fighting against print, but actually, it's enhancing it. It's giving us more ways to adapt to how the world has changed. Perhaps people thought when the internet was invented, that's it, newspapers are done. But that's not happened, and I don't think it will. And I think there's also a perception that young people aren't reading newspapers. However, from my friends and the group of people I know, they're all extremely informed in the news, whether you're working at KPMG, you're a lawyer, whatever it is that you're doing, you never want to be the person in the room that doesn't know what's going on in the news. So whether they're consuming that online, in print, whatever it may be, you know, people are still consuming news just because they're not picking up the newspaper. It still, as a whole brand, is still relevant.
And also, like, we're all going to be smashing up our phones with the nudge, so that's going to be amazing for print.
So we're all reading the paper now.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, it's been really, really interesting talking to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lucy.